And you're welcome to our special this weekend, which focuses on Nigeria's dynamic startup ecosystem. Over the past decade, Nigeria has become the poster child for African innovation, producing 4 of the 7 unicorns on the continent and attracting over $2 billion in venture capital between 2015 and 2022.
However, 2023 has seen a significant shift from 2023. Nigerian startups, which once led the continent in funding, have fallen behind Kenya, Egypt, and South Africa. So let's look into the factors behind this decline and explore the future of venture capital investment in Nigeria. And so joining us in the studio to provide insights is Ayobamigbe Teriba. He's a program lead for VC4A. And Ayobamigbe, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you very much.
Let's get started. I would like for you to, just start with the big picture for us, right? Nigeria has been a leader in the African startups, right, as the scene for years. So can you help us summarize, what made Nigeria such an attractive destination for venture capital investments up until recently?
So the first thing to note is Nigeria is the giant of Africa, but we go with the name tag. And as of today, Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa and the most populous black nation in the world. Something to know about Nigeria that makes it dynamic is first, the population is quite a number to attract people, because we always believe that you create consumer markets and it's built on population size. Something to also note is the median age in Nigeria is about 18, in Europe is about 53. So you are seeing that a lot of the continents we really look forward to are growing old, and so sad they are not replicating fast enough. A lot of them, if you look at the G7 summit, they had conversation about reproduction, and even the Pope was leading a charge that everybody should reproduce, which is quite an interesting thing. But you also would see that in Africa, you've got like a very large expanse of arable land. I was listening to the president of the African Investment Bank speaking where he was talking about the fact that Africa is currently housing about 30 to 40% of the arable land across the world. And the last one to think through, which is quite important, is 1 in every 3 humans on Earth by year 2050 will be an African. So all these metrics now comes back to Nigeria, which is expected to be about 400 million people by 2050. So when you look at all these numbers, and I tell you, I'm building something to cater to these markets, obviously that turns your eyes, right? And that's where you begin to see Nigeria playing that part and being very attractive to international investors who are saying, as we continuously look for where to deploy capital, because venture capital is an asset class. It's just the way you look at stocks, you look at equities, you look at buying lands, you look at other ways of investment. Venture capital is also a point where it's mass risk, mass reward, which is you put money into a tech, like this tab you have. That's a hardware, but everything you're looking around from different things in the studio is software. So when you think that you can sell that to a huge number of people and they could grow into consuming it, yeah, that's a big number, and that's what Nigeria's pushing.
So obviously, as we develop, we have a big appetite for tech and software and all of that, and that made us attractive. Are we still attractive? Are we still the giant? Would you call Nigeria the giant after Egypt and Kenya? Startups actually made more than Nigeria only made $575 million last year. Egypt and Kenya, I think, even South Africa made more than we did. So what gives?
I mean, I'm sorry for the way it looks today.
You don't have to, it's not your fault.
I mean, it's not my fault, but the truth is also, we also need to a little bit of going to talking about the truth of today. In fact, that people at home actually feel the brunt a lot more. And now look into the GDP. Nigeria is currently going through shrinkflation, which means that we used to be the biggest GDP in Africa, and we are currently 4th in the world. And if you look at that, it also sends numbers and shivers to everybody, even people investing their money, to say, why should I come to Nigeria when Algeria is currently the 2nd or the 3rd biggest economy in Africa? Why should I come to Nigeria when Egypt, is quite bigger than Nigeria? So again, the numbers don't look too good at the moment, but I would always tell you that because of our population, we just need to get our policies right. And this thing is about choices. Everybody is building different things. Investors just must believe that this is the market where they should make the bet on. So I think it looks up, it looks bright, even though the way it looks today, you can't for anything take away our population, right? And that's an important thing to think about.
I'm so glad you just talked about population because which takes us to our next question, right? Whether we like it or not, the demography still shows that we're by far the most populated country at this side of the world, this continent, right? And so with that in mind, does this demographic advantage that we have still offer potential for future investors?
Yes, it does, because like I did mention to you, today Asia is the hotbed of, the big tech jostling into be there. Apple is opening new flagship stores there. Microsoft is investing in AI there. India is the most populous country on earth. China is second biggest population on earth. All these metric is a today's metric. And you could see that that's where everybody's playing this push and pull to be active. Africa is that for the future. The sad thing about consumer markets is sometimes you need to wait it out. And that's why you look at even the actuals of what's happening now, where you're finding some big corporations pull out, or some big corporations say rather than pull out, we would change our supply lines, we would change our supply chain. We would rather produce with local productions rather than actually continuously import, because the numbers for Nigeria don't make sense for importation. So again, it's you building consumer markets, and I kind of want to, quote Tokbalawani, the CEO of Ilios, and he says, while the consumer might be struggling on affordability, you can't bet against their consumption.
All right, I'm going to
pause
hold you there, pause you on
yeah.
that one, Teriba. We will come back to this because there's so much that needs to be discussed regarding the population that you talked about. But we're getting information that we have breaking news right now. So we're going to go right to our correspondent.
Very quickly, because we're pressed for time. In these challenging times that Nigerian startups have found themselves, what is your outlook, for Nigerian startups, and what do they need to do to attract investors, and how can venture capital firms help, in a sort of a synergy to improve investments?
Summarily,
for
please.
Nigeria?
Yeah. So the first thing to note is it's quite a tough time, and I think the best way to overcome a tough time is accepting it's a tough time, and then building things that again are more like emergency use cases for people. President Obasanjo said something where he said that I could wear my father's clothes, but I can't eat my father's food because, I have to eat my own food. And that means things like, production of like food, necessities and stuff is there. But again, our population is not going to shrink overnight. So we still need to continuously build businesses on great unit economics and definitely collaborating more to be able to enable us succeed.
Oh, thank you very much. We're going to come back to this. There's still so much that we need to ask and we need to know.
Ayobamigbe Teriba, he is the program lead VC for A, and we'll be talking about the dwindling venture capital investments in Nigerian startups, which is declined since 2023. We've seen a significant decline starting from 2022.
I've got a question.
Please.
You talk about population being an asset for countries like India and Asia, but exactly how is it an asset? Because if we're the most populous Black African nation, then we can use that to our advantage. Are we capable? How, in definitive terms, can we use our population? Is it by taxing the populace or putting them to work? Which is kind of like slavery, but you explain.
So the first thing to know is population is a strength if used appropriately. Countries in the world like Brazil, Indonesia, India, the US actually ride on their population, but there's something that works with population: productivity and earning capacity. What we are battling with in Nigeria is majority of our population live below poverty lines. So as it is today, it is becoming more of a burden than an asset. But in the net scope of it, population is where you build consumers on. So for us, we actually have the opportunity, but sadly, our policies as a government, both fiscal and in last year's monetary, have not been able to build that earning capacity for people to be able to afford technological products, which most times comes between the needs and the wants, right?
I'm trying to get this real clear.
Yeah.
Now, how does Asia do it? India, I know, well, many countries, especially tech countries, outsource their special customer care to Indian companies.
Yes.
Is this what you're talking about?
No. So what I'm talking about is first, you speak English.
Yes, I do.
The biggest markets in the world are English-speaking markets, except China, which is second. The US is English. The UK is English. Canada is English. And G7 countries, right? If you have about 4 in G7 speaking English, that means that you can be able to provide services to them. Second of all, your age, the age of your population. The median age in Nigeria is 18, as I had mentioned. In Africa, it's 18. It is 53 in Europe, which means that you will do more productive things because you're in your prime to do them. So when you're talking about how does the population count for you, first, your time zone too. Your time zone is in a favorable time zone, which means you wake up in the time when majority of the world is awake. Europe, and even sometimes you could actually also work with the Eastern time in the US or other kind of time zones, which means you can offer service. And we've thought through this. I currently live in Nigeria, but work for an international organization in Holland. VC4 is an Holland-based organization. And I resume daily like I'm working in the bank, right? That means that I wake up, provide productive hours to Europe, and then I get paid for those productive hours, which means that I am a net contributor to Nigerians' foreign exchange because there is value for money. If we could get a lot more people, we start with the developer community where a lot more developers are working in US companies, UK companies, and that means that people could export. I'll give you a stat. Do you know that Nigeria's third trading partner when it comes to exchange of value is actually Ghana and Cameroon? Its first is the UK, second is the US. That's where our remittances mostly come from. But actually, Nigeria with our population should be exporting value to Europe, should be exporting value to Asia, should be exporting value to all those countries. But where are they taking it to? They're taking it to India because first, it's not just about age, there's education. That's the sophistication of, the knowledge you have. There is also the fact where people are technologically advanced. And look at it, India is at the point where the world goes to them now to have conversations about building AI, AI infrastructure, building, technology tools and all those things. And that's how you put your population to work.
You are the program lead for VC4A.
Yes.
Which means that you are at the forefront looking at startups and watching the trends.
Yeah.
What is your forecast for Nigerian startups in the next, say, 5 years?
So the thing about Nigeria is I'm bullish on Nigeria, right? And it's not maybe the best time to have those forecasts, but I would say first is we are at the prime stage where we can definitely build on the collective knowledge that is beaming out of here. First, you've got a lot of people going into technology institutions and also going into universities. That means that more people are coming out with the understanding of things that people need, and they are building it. Second of all, I think you need to look at innovation from a point where it's digital entrepreneurship. People are actually doing a lot more entrepreneurship these days, and it means that people are taking the guard to say there are problems there, I want to solve it. The more we can not just build for Nigeria, but build for consumption across even West Africa, and even the countries you mentioned, like South Africa and Kenya, and other kind of emerging markets, if you think about like Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, the more we can be able to use technology as another exchange for foreign income. And if you think through it, let's look at the biggest contributors to Nigerians' GDP. Early dwindling, services is going up, which means that if we provide not just service but value-adding services, we could make a good foreign exchange from there. The last stat to drop with you is that it took, it starts about infrastructure. In 2005, it took 200 people to have access to landlines. In 2022, currently about 85% of people have access to cell devices and internet connection. So that's how we build our economy, and that's how we scale it up.
Ayobami,
what about the ABCs of building the economy using your population? Wow, that's very nice.
And that was Ayobamigbe Teriba. He is the program lead at VC4A, and we're talking about the dwindling investments in African, or rather Nigerian startups. Well, Ayobamigbe, many thanks again.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Look forward to